Three.
All right, we are live.
All right. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the April edition of the virtual Texas NORML monthly meeting. We are now 1 year of virtual meetings. I don't know if you guys can see Brandon's background there, but he's representing the Flamingo Cantina right now, which is where our meetings typically are held. And, we long for the day that we can get back into the Flamingo Cantina and have in-person meetings and do it safely. So we're really, really excited about that day to come. I'm not sure when that's going to be, but it's going to be. I can assure you that. We have a pretty exciting meeting tonight. This is actually my first time doing a virtual meeting. I have not had the luxury of hosting any of these throughout the pandemic. So I'm excited to be here with you all. Thank every one of you for being here. Those of you on the call here with us, and also those of you in the Facebook world as well. A lot of exciting things happening right now. I don't know if you guys have been paying attention, but it is Cannabis Legislation Week at the Capitol. There have been hearings yesterday, today, and there's one tomorrow as well. The one yesterday lasted until about 6 o'clock in the morning. And then our team of dedicated advocates went home, took a shower, brushed their teeth, and was right back there by 8 o'clock this morning for the medical hearing. So it was it's really exciting. And we will hear from Jax Finkel here in just a little bit, giving us an update on everything that she has seen so far at the Capitol. We also have the pleasure of a member from National here with us, Justin Strekal. Did I say that correctly? Am I pronouncing that right?
Yeah.
Justin's going to be giving us a federal update, and so we'll go ahead and let him roll into that.
Great. Well, hey, thank you so very much for having me. It's a very exciting time to be getting to join Texas NORML this evening to give you a federal policy update. First, I just want to truly say thank you to Jackson, Heather, and the whole amazing team. I've loved seeing the photos coming out of this week of folks down there at the state capitol. I know that this is an every other year opportunity, and I think you guys are taking every advantage that you can, given the circumstances, and you're doing it during a global pandemic. So really, thank you for all that you're doing and the leadership. And I hope that the victories that are pouring out from around the country today are giving you a shot of momentum and an added legitimacy to your efforts as you're having conversations with state lawmakers this week. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Justin Strekal. I am National NORML's political director and federal lobbyist. In my capacity, I seek to represent all marijuana consumers' interests when it comes to policy reform at the federal level. And I've been mandated with the principal charge of removing marijuana from the Controlled Substances Act, thus effectively ending federal prohibition and federal criminalization. There are a lot of other competing interests right now when it comes to what federal policy reform should look like, be it taking a very incremental approach to looking to accomplish a comprehensive package all at once, and we are an all of the above yes and approach, seeing as how much can we get as quickly as possible to provide as much relief as possible moving forward. I got a couple ways I want to break down for today's federal policy update. Briefly address the Safe Banking Act, comprehensive efforts surrounding descheduling, touching on the MORE Act, and proposed efforts that we expect to see coming out in the coming weeks. I'm also going to briefly address the Biden administration, the recent revelations about them terminating or denying employment for professional staff in the administration because of previous cannabis consumption. And then lastly, I'm going to end on appropriations, which is where I think we have actually the most viable pathway forward on implementing federal reform in the next 2 years. If you have any questions, please put them through the chat, or if there's, as the moderator, if there's things coming in from the live stream, I'm happy to address them too. First, safe banking. The Safe Banking Act, for those of you who have engaged in any of the state legal programs outside of Texas, or if you are one of the few folks who are participating under TCUP, then you are well aware, at least you've heard stories from other jurisdictions, of the issues that federal prohibition has caused for these state regulated licensed businesses. That they, essentially they cannot, because of federal prohibition, accept any kind of, or enter into, any kind of business relationship with financial institutions. That means if they, you want to set up a business, you can't get access to traditional lending tools. So you'd have to know somebody who has cash that they can lend you if you aren't already flush yourself. Downstream for consumer efforts, for medical programs, you're forcing consumers to have to go and purchase in cash. These businesses have to handle all this cash. They have to hire security details and whatnot to, I'm sure you may have heard from your state efforts, what about the duffel bags full of money? That wouldn't be a case if the Safe Banking Act was put into law. To be clear, though, the Safe Banking Act merely provides legal protections for banking institutions to enter into agreements and arrangements with marijuana-related businesses, MRBs. It doesn't actually create any protections for consumers or business owners in the marijuana space. So on one hand, it normalizes marijuana policy reform and the implementation of consumer markets, be it for medical or adult use. On the other hand, it literally doesn't offer any protections for people who consume cannabis. So it's kind of a choose your own adventure story. It was the first ever bill to get a standalone vote in a chamber of Congress. In September of 2019, it passed on what's known as suspension with 321 yes votes, including 47% of elected Republicans at the time in the House of Representatives. Unfortunately, it was never taken up in the Senate in the previous Congress. And now here we are in a brand new Congress. It has to move through both chambers again. And the bill was just recently introduced in both chambers. You can find the action alert at norml.org. Quickly contact your lawmakers, both senators and your federal representative. Tell them you support the Safe Banking Act if that's something that's important to you. We don't expect for that to move incredibly quickly. There's a conversation about in the House whether or not they should move more comprehensive legislation together as a package deal. But I do expect safe banking to get more consideration after we see the infrastructure bill that President Biden just put out get consideration. The next thing is comprehensive descheduling. This is what most people want to hear about. This is, how are we going to end federal prohibition? And so that way your state lawmakers are going to no longer tell you that their hands are tied when it comes to maintaining the oppressive policy of criminalization. For those of you who are unaware, last December 4th, the House of Representatives passed the Marijuana Opportunity Reinvestment and Expungement Act, or MORE Act. This bill was the first ever bill to get taken up that would remove marijuana from the Controlled Substances Act, and it successfully passed. So it was certainly a historic moment. This came on the heels just a month earlier of 4 additional states voting to legalize cannabis through ballot measures around the country. Unfortunately, though, the Senate, but unsurprisingly, the Senate did not take up the MORE Act after it had passed in the House. And on January 3rd, when the new Congress got sworn in, both houses reset. It needs to get reintroduced if it's to get considered in the House again. As of this moment, in both the House and in the Senate, all we have is public commitments from the Judiciary Committee Chairman, Jerry Nadler, who was the lead sponsor of the MORE Act last Congress, that he will be putting forward the MORE Act soon. And then in the Senate, we now have Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, along with Chairman Ron Wyden, the chair of the Finance Committee, which just because of technicalities and how tax policy works in the Senate and jurisdictional issues, it's actually the Finance Committee that's the principal committee of jurisdiction when it comes to cannabis policy reform in the Senate. So we have the chairman of the originating committee and the Senate Majority Leader publicly saying, along with Cory Booker, that they plan to introduce a package together that would end marijuana prohibition. I've been in regular talks with offices on both sides of Capitol Hill. We do expect the MORE Act to get reintroduced in the coming days. And on the Senate, those offices, we anticipate they're going to maintain the descheduling component from the MORE Act and many of the criminal justice reform provisions that would seek to facilitate the expungements and incentivize state and local expungements, but also address what the MORE Act did not, which is put forward a kind of, as I refer to, a glide path as we see more and more states reform their policies, trying to have some sort of standardization when it comes to labeling and other aspects of consumer safety and product safety, such as standardizing serving sizes and standardizing a testing regimen and labeling, so that way consumers, no matter what state it is in the United States that you're purchasing cannabis in, you know exactly what's in, and it's not a completely different system, kind of similar to how we have with alcohol and the standardization of understanding ABVs and proofs. So that's that. Again, I wish I could tell you exactly when the bills were coming out. A lot of this is just because of the pent up legislative priorities of the governing coalition that is right now, and the fact that Joe Biden is a long-standing prohibitionist, and because of policies that have been enacted that Joe Biden, back when he was a senator, put forward, that led to increased arrests, increased incarceration, and increased crackdown on marijuana consumers. While he has recently been saying different policy or uttering different policy platforms, we've yet to see any concrete proposals that actually indicate that his administration is willing to be on board with ending prohibition. I do see we got a question coming in from online, talking about the safe banking. Actually, we'll be focusing more on the MORE Act. I think right now that's a great question, and I want to kind of like address the crux of it, which is, should we be looking at piecemeal approaches that don't give us everything we want, or should we be looking at everything and demanding everything? And I am a big proponent and believer in a diversity of tactics and asking for everything that you want and being willing to negotiate down from there. I think that when we're working to normalize this issue, for lack of a better term, and we're working to achieve substantive policy reform, given the history of criminalization, given the harm that it is proposed, if we can make sure that tomorrow the policy is better than it is today, instead of a trajectory that the following day it's going to be better and the following day it's going to be better, then we should move forward as quickly as possible. So I certainly don't want to let the perfect be the enemy of the good here. So yeah, that's descheduling. I suspect that we'll see bills being reintroduced in both chambers of Congress for ending prohibition by the majority party in the next 1 to 2 months. I know on the Senate, they're still working out a couple more of the components in regard and soliciting feedback as from some of the legal states as far as best practices when it comes to labeling and other issues like that. But for any of you who've never heard of the Alcohol and Tobacco Tax and Trade Bureau, I strongly encourage you to do your research. If you're really interested in what a federal regulatory structure should look like, ttb.gov, TTB for short, Tax and Trade Bureau. It is good to remember that in this country, states are the primary arbiters of regulations when it comes to alcohol. This is one of the reasons why breweries in Texas can sell directly to consumer, but you can't sell directly to consumer in other states from Texas. It's one of the reasons why there's such a regionalist approach when we look at things like craft beer and wine. It's one of those areas where if you are licensed in a state, it's a relatively simple and free application to get your federal permit. And should you be compliant under state policy, you're going to be compliant under the federal regime, because the federal regime is a simplified process, and every state has already baked it into their regulatory structures of approval. So it's really interesting if you want to go down a wonky pathway of regulations. I'm always happy to talk about that more, and I do a lot of Facebook Lives on NORML's Facebook if you're interested in engaging there. Next thing I want to talk about is the Office of Personnel Management, OPM, and some headlines that the Biden administration made when it came to revelations that they were denying employment and even firing individuals for admitting previous past consumption of cannabis. I would like to just kind of, as a level setting thing, I should admit I did intern at the White House in 2009 under the Obama administration. I had to fill out an FBI background check. I lied saying that I never consumed cannabis because that was one of the questions on that background check. In 2009, by then, I had smoked a lot of weed. But that is one of the processes that is baked into the system. And that's longstanding public policy because of a 1986 executive order that was issued by Ronald Reagan, the Federal Workplace or Federal Drug-Free Workplace Executive Order 12564. And this has just been the policy. Right before these recent revelations came out about the employment issues at OPM, the acting director of the Office of Personnel Management actually issued new guidance saying that acknowledging or admitting previous consumption wouldn't automatically disqualify an individual from employment. And that they would actually, like hiring managers would be given a little bit of leeway, to be able to and use their discretion if previous consumption was acknowledged to still move forward and hire an individual. That made the Biden administration's hiring policies the most forward-thinking hiring policies of a presidential administration since Jimmy Carter's administration. So he is the best we've had in 40 years, and it's still bad. So that's one of those things, just to keep things in context, right? And I think that, honestly, I've been talking with a lot of congressional offices and a lot of reporters who are covering this issue, and they're saying, oh, whoa, how terrible is it that a few staffers who wanted to work in the White House, who are qualified, dedicated public servants, they were denied that opportunity because they consume cannabis. And I, every time I hear one of those, I think those privileged political operatives, they're going to be okay. They're going to find other ways to work and continue to serve their country. But I think about the fact that 1 in 7 Americans, who are 14% of the population who acknowledges consuming cannabis on at least a semi-regular basis, is on a regular basis discriminated against because of private employment drug testing policies or public employment, state level, municipal level drug testing policies when it comes to pre-employment or random drug screening. So when you guys are talking, if and when you guys are in your community, you're talking about, and people bring up the federal firings, I strongly encourage you, bring it down locally, bring it down to the community, because as you're looking to reform Texas policies, you want to make sure that Texas employers aren't going to continue to be conducting completely devoid and non-effective pre-employment and random drug screening for THC. So that is something that definitely I hope that y'all are considering. Right, we're going to be putting out some more information about that in the coming days, and you can find out a lot of information at NORML.org about the ineffectiveness of drugs or of urinalysis and blood testing for trace metabolic THC elements. So I know that's a lot. I know I'm starting to run out of time, but the last thing I want to touch on is appropriations. How the federal Congress spends all of our money that we give them, and all of the few dollars that come in from other players. To date, right now, the only way federal policy has been changed when it comes to marijuana policy reform is a spending restriction, previously known as the Rohrabacher-Farr Amendment. What this amendment does is it restricts the Department of Justice's ability to spend one nickel or use one paperclip to enforce federal prohibition against state legal medical marijuana programs, meaning their regulators, their businesses, and their consumers. This has been in effect since 2014. It is our hope that we dramatically increase the amount of legislative language that we can get in the appropriations package in this Congress. In the previous Congress, in the House of Representatives, not only did we get language to expand that existing protection and spending restriction to prevent the Department of Justice from interfering with both medical and adult use programs, businesses, and consumers. We got a lot of other things done. We got language approved to roll back and restrict pre-employment drug testing for federal employment and contractors. We got language to protect universities that want to seek to begin to develop curriculum and engage in marijuana research. We got language done to improve the ability for medical patients to get access in different jurisdictions, and a number of other technical conforming pieces. I think that now that the Senate chamber has flipped partisan control and we no longer see Richard Shelby, Senator of Alabama, as the chairman of the Senate Appropriations Committee, a long-standing prohibitionist who touts reefer madness rhetoric, he no longer holds the gavel. Now it's Senator Patrick Leahy from Vermont representing a legal marijuana state. I think we have a real shot at changing those policies. So in the coming weeks, you're going to see NORML be putting out calls to action to contact your lawmakers. Whether or not you have a Republican or a Democratic lawmaker, we need those members to be in favor of protecting state programs from federal intervention through the expanded DOJ spending restriction. That's our number one priority, and I think we can do it. So you'll be seeing a lot more of that coming out starting in 2 weeks from National NORML. So make sure you're on our email list. Sign up at norml.org. If you're on Texas NORML's email list, that means you're going to get on NORML's email list as well. And I see another question coming in. Oh, this is a long question from Julian. Hi, Julian. Good to hear from you again. It is, even if we pass, okay. I really love this question. So I'm gonna, it's a very long question, so I'm gonna make it really short. If the federal government descheduled marijuana today, people in Texas would still be arrested tomorrow. They will be arrested under local criminalization policies. They will be arrested under state level criminalization policies. They will still be detained under the cite and summons or some policies. They will still have to go to court. They can still get criminal records. It can still ruin their lives. That is not going to change because federal prohibition has changed. Per a conversation I had with Jax, there will be a review that will be triggered, but it won't necessarily mean anything for the underlying policy of criminalization. So you will never hear me use the term federal legalization when I talk about descheduling. I always say ending prohibition or ending criminalization, because I don't want to give any of you the impression that if we get federal reform, then all of a sudden you have freedoms under Texas law or under your local law, because you still won't, because we live in a federalist republic. And your localities are the principal arbiters and the principal enforcers of that policy. So please, 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 if we win the damn thing in this next 2 years, don't assume, unless you guys win the damn thing this week, this session, it isn't going to be at earliest until 2023 that you're going to be able to go into the Texas state capitol and say, look, comprehensive federal reforms have been enacted. You can no longer lay the blame at the federal government for imposing this arbitrary policy that reduces our freedom and liberty here in Texas. As adults, it's time to legalize cannabis. But yeah, so that's a great question, Julian. Thank you so very much. That's what I got as far as federal level. Dave, Jax, Brett, Chris, Steven, am I missing anything? Is there anything else that I can touch on that I didn't?
Justin, that was very informative. Thank you very, very much. I certainly appreciate you taking your time out. If you would like to stick around and maybe answer some more questions in the Q&A, you're more than welcome. And I know your time is valuable. So if you need to get going,
I'll stick around. I'll turn the video off, but yeah, I'll stick around for the Q&A.
That's perfect. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.
Everybody, thank you. Thank Kim. That was great. And now, without further ado, I'm going to turn the mic over to our fearless leader, Miss Jax Finkel. Jax has been at the Capitol since she got up yesterday, essentially. So we're going to let her go ahead and tell us what all she's seen and heard. Jax, thank you. In just a moment, Jax will be there. Well, hello, Miss Heather. What a surprise. This is beautiful. Thank you so much. While they're taking care of some technical difficulties, everybody please welcome, whenever she comes back, Miss Heather Fazio, along with Miss Jax Finkel. While we wait, I will talk about for just a couple of minutes until they are ready. My experiences with lobbying this session. I have not been to the Capitol yet, and I've got plans to maybe go set up an appointment and go up there. But as far as in-person lobbying, I'm not going to be doing a whole lot of that. No, I have been sending my phone calls and my emails, and I also participated in our a couple of weeks ago, a week ago. Yeah. Everyone was wondering how it was going to go, and I think it went. I was able to have some really good conversations with some staffers, and actually with also some reps. Some conversations, some questions. I was able to educate them. And it was very, very productive. And we had a lot of participants. In here in just a little bit, Brandon and Chris are going to tell you their experiences because they also didn't attend our virtual lobby day, but that does not mean they're not working hard. And they will explain all of that to you in just a bit as well. Give me 1 second. Oh, hi. What's going on, Jax? How are you?
Hi,
Welcome.
it's me. Sorry about that, guys. I've had a really rough last couple of days, and I had a little technical difficulty, and I had to escape for a second. So thank you for your patience and support. How's everybody doing?
Thank you for being here.
Awesome. I see we've got a whole bunch of people on the call today, and I see there's a bunch of people watching on Facebook. So let me just dive right in. It's been a heck of a week, as I'm sure you guys saw. We've got back-to-back hearings, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. So I'm going to give you the chronological rundown, and then I will give you some updates on what's coming up next. So Tuesday morning, waking up bright and early, getting at the Capitol. My friend Heather Fazio, who you guys saw just a second ago. Thank you, Heather, for rescuing me. She's pretty great. So we went up to the Capitol, and as you guys know, we were putting together binders, committee binders for both the Criminal Jurisprudence Committee and also the Public Health Committee. And so the Public Health Committee got educational resources about the plant, an overview of what the bill does and what our recommendations are for it, as well as all of the testimonials that everyone submitted to us. Thank you, Stephen, who's adminning for us on this Zoom call today, for helping editing those, along with a lot of our volunteers. So we delivered that, as well as the educational exhibit that we put together. We went ahead and printed that, included that. And then on the criminal justice side, criminal jurisprudence, we had some testimonials we included there, our infographics, and we did a comparison of what all the bills are, because if you've been watching, you know that there was 8 bills that were heard that addressed varying things, from possession of marijuana flower to THC concentrates to paraphernalia. So it ran the whole gambit. And then starting at 1 o'clock that day on Tuesday, I'm kind of forgetting what day it is. That was Tuesday. We started the hearing, and it was the 8 cannabis bills, but there was also a bunch of bonds bills. And in the past, what they've done is they've taken and done it by subject and just had all of the cannabis bills at once, but they did it a little differently this time. And it was like, you know, a bail bill, a cannabis bill, you know, a bill about all these different charges, right? And so it kind of rotated throughout the night. It ended up being a really long night, you guys. I typically try to just be support during these hearings, but several of the authors had reached out asking for me to offer some verbal testimony. And I was very happy to, because any of these bills would be a wonderful and welcome change from the current status quo in Texas. And the hearing went on. I was the second to last person to testify on Aaron Zwiener's bill at 6 in the morning. So that was a really special experience. And I just want to reflect to everyone how much work our legislators are putting in when they're up at the Capitol. I know that we can be frustrated with them. We can have varying opinions, you know, on what they're doing and what we think about it. But, you know, some of those committee members had to be back up at the Capitol at 8 a.m. for hearings. So, for example, you know, Rep. Zwiener didn't really sleep. She got to shower and that was it, you know. And I was a bit in the same boat. So I have a lot of compassion for what they have to do for these 140 days every 2 years. So mad props to, I think it was Representative Steve Toth, a Republican, Aaron Zwiener, a Democrat, and then Jasmine Crockett were the last bills to be laid out. They were very late in the evening. So specific thanks and dedication to those legislators. So then, you know, come back, shower, change, put some food in my face, and go right back for the medical hearing, which started at 8 a.m. There was quite a lot of people there. There was an overflow room. The way that the agenda was laid out was that it was one cannabis bill, which is the chair's bill, Chairwoman Clicks, and then it was a handful of abortion bills. And so we weren't really sure, would we be before or after, would they intermingle? So we just were prepared to be prepared. And ended up that it was the first bill, thankfully. So not another long, super long day at the Capitol. I was happy about that. And there was some really wonderful testimony from several doctors and some patients and some veterans who came up and shared their stories. But I want to point out that on the committee woman's or the chairwoman's notice, she had mentioned not only that she would limit the time for testimony, which we see often in hearings that are really busy, but also that she was going to limit the number of people testifying. So limit the number of witnesses. I don't really recall seeing that before, but clearly within her purview to do. And I think it was because, you know, with the abortion bills in Texas, typically there are extremely long all-night hearings. And so basically she was saying that she would limit it so that they could make sure that they got through all of their things in time. Sadly, the way that it ended up closing for the hearing was a patient, Elizabeth, was called up to testify. She was going to be the last witness in the block of witnesses that they were allowing. And in her effort to get over from the overflow room, unfortunately, she wasn't able to make it enough in quick enough time, even though it was like 30 seconds, let's be real. She made it really fast from across the building, but she missed her opportunity, and the bill had closed, and because of procedural issues, it couldn't be reopened. And so I really am empathetic to how frustrating that must have been for her and for the other people who were not able to share their testimony because of the witness limitations. But I'm going to actually quote Elizabeth: "A challenge is an opportunity." And so this is an opportunity for her and for all of us to continue to offer feedback. Make sure you go to texasnormal.org and click on the 1535 hearing information for the medical cannabis bill. And I think they're still accepting testimony. Yeah, they're still accepting testimony until the end of the hearing, whenever that is tonight. So that could be midnight. So if you haven't shared your thoughts, please do. I want to just make note that these written comments that you're submitting are part of the official record. So I want to make sure that you all are keeping that in mind, that what you put in there will be in the record for Texas forever. So be thoughtful, be direct, and if at all possible, be polite, because this will be a reflection of you and your position on this policy forever. So that hearing adjourned, and we were able to hang out with some of our colleagues, and everybody kind of headed out of town, and I came back to the hotel and took a nap, because I have to tell you, I have not been up for almost 30 hours since my 20s, says Granny Jax over here. So I'm giggling at me. So it was very nice to nap and be back here. Heather and I are working on some more veteran exhibits and medical exhibits that'll be up on the Capitol in the next week or two. And we're also preparing for tomorrow. So tomorrow is the hemp hearing. And the bill as written does have some potential issues for Delta 8 and Delta 10 products being limited. So there is allegedly going to be a committee substitute that addresses that. I have not read the actual language, but otherwise a lot of the verbiage in the bill is some cleanup language. There's also a hemp research program that it would initiate and create. So I'm looking forward to being there bright-eyed and bushy-tailed tomorrow at 8 a.m. I guess let me just open it up and see if you guys have any questions, because honestly, I love all of you people, but I cannot stay on this video chat. Mama needs to nap. Mama needs to prepare. And I need to help Heather with these graphics because I know she's over there working on them. So actually, do you guys, because I know all of y'all have been watching what's going on. Brandon, Chris, Dave, Justin, do y'all have any questions? Let's see, I see something in the chat. Justin, Jax, how does it feel to be an American hero? I don't know, Heather, how do you feel? You're an American hero too. I think we feel pretty good. I don't see any questions on Facebook. I don't hear any questions from you guys, so I'm just gonna assume that I talked about everything really well. But DCRIM was a long day, very successful day. I think we should all feel really proud with how it went and how our legislators represented us in a bipartisan way. I hope that you'll all continue to reach out to your personal legislators to encourage them on this. And then with medical, you know, it's the chairwoman's bill. It's very likely to pass and move through. So our work to be done on the medical side is in the Senate. So I really encourage all of you, reach out to your senators right now and make sure that they know exactly how you feel about medical cannabis. I see a few more things. Let's see. So how does 1535 differ from previous bills is one of the questions. Okay, great one. So previous bills can mean a lot of things. So Representative Click's bills have always been the bills that have passed. She was the original author of the Texas Compassionate Use Program. She expanded it last session and she is expanding it again today. So in comparison to her other ones, it just continues to make it more inclusive. But in comparison to other, you know, legislation that's been authored, it does a lot of things that are important, but it misses some marks. And I think that in our recommendations, we were very thoughtful about that. But for example, HB 1535 would take what is now chronic cancer, and it would just change it to anyone with cancer. It would add pain, which is extremely important, and it would add PTSD, but only for veterans. Now, my understanding is that the committee substitute is going to remove that veteran requirement, but I have not read it myself, so I cannot confirm that quite yet. In addition, it creates a research board, and it creates some different ways to approve of conditions, and it would raise the THC cap from 0.5 to 5%. Now, while a THC cap is not ideal, and really we should be moving to a weight-based prescription or recommendation like we do with other pharmaceuticals, you know, 5 milligrams of Valium, not 5% Valium, you know, 5 milligrams of THC, not 5% THC. So I think that that would be ideal, but the lift of the cap, raising it to 5% is really good. And the reason that it is because the licensees here in Texas have actually become really creative with their formulations. And there are some one-to-one formulations that you can get THC to CBD, but the issue there is that there's a lot of carrier oil. And for some people, whatever the carrier is. So in some cases it's oil, or it's in a lozenge, or whatever. And so especially with the oil, there can be side effects of taking enough oil to reach the level of what you need. It can cause some irritable bowel type symptoms. And so hopefully that will reduce that for the people that are using it. But of course, you know, we don't support a THC cap, but compared to other bills that are authored out there, you know, there's some bills that only add PTSD. There are some bills that let doctors totally decide. So it's squarely in the middle ground. And, you know, Representative Click has dedicatedly say that she is going to work on what she thinks she can pass. And so I think it's our job to continue to encourage her to expand it. But hopefully that answers your question as to how it compares. Do you think Texas will make CBD vaping illegal? So I don't think that they'll make vaping illegal. As I'm sure you guys know, there's that hearing, the smokable hemp hearing that's going on that would deal with, you know, the CBD cartridges and pre-rolls and all of that. Currently, there's a TRO out that allows these products to be grandfathered in until the lawsuit is finalized. It would be nice to see some codifying of allowing smokable hemp products to be manufactured and retailed in Texas in this bill, and we'll see if perhaps that happens in committee substitutes. To the best of your knowledge, is Dan Patrick open to hearing medical cannabis bills in the Senate? He has said openly that he is that he does believe that there's going to be improvements to the medical program. Retail cannabis market will probably not be discussed in his chamber, and he hasn't really spoken much on decrim recently, unless am I forgetting something, Heather? No. So decrim, we think that there is some ability to work there, more movement and more ability than last session. In regards to patients, how can one apply for the Texas Compassionate Use Program? If you go to the informedtexas.org, there is a page where you can read up on the program, and there is a tutorial there that you can take for free that will show you how you can enroll in the program and show you where the link is to find a doctor who could help you. All right, let's see. Will it protect patients and parents from CPS? You know, that was brought up in the hearing today. It is not currently included, and I hope that it can be added. It's something that was in one version of the bill several sessions ago, but it hasn't made it through. Let's see, did I miss any? I feel like I missed one. All right, I don't see any more. No more questions. Okay, guys. I'm going to have a hot meal. I'm going to lay down and I'm going to look at graphics, and I'm going to convalesce, as I like to say. It's an old school word for rest. So on that note, I just want to say, Dave, thank you so much for hosting tonight and for managing everything. Stephen, thank you so much for adminning tonight and making sure it could happen. Justin, that was a really great federal update. I'm really excited for all the things that you're doing. And I want to specifically thank the national office for all of the support that they offer Texas NORML when it comes to looking for science or resources or anything like that. They are so responsive, and I'm really grateful. Also, Brandon and Chris, I know you guys are doing a lot of work for patients and making sure that voices are heard and people understand and know what's going on. So I just want to express my gratitude for all of you guys. And I really want to express my gratitude for everyone who showed up at the Capitol, everyone who participated in submitting their testimony electronically. This is how we're going to make change this session. I appreciate y'all being willing to pivot and do the work that we have to do, because it's not easy work. So thank you, guys.
Ms. Jax, Ms. Heather, thank you both so very, very much for all your hard work. Jax, thanks for that update. And yeah, get some rest, because you've got another long day tomorrow. Thank you. Well, folks, we'll just keep it moving. Our next speaker is a really good friend of mine. Well, they're all really good friends of mine. But this man is one of the more dedicated advocates that I know personally, and I know quite a few of them. So, Mr. Chris Gazzolia, sir, go right ahead.
Yes, sir. Well, I just was going to talk about testimony and my experience in preparing testimony and the roadblocks that you run into that you don't maybe expect. Like, for instance, kind of what happened this morning with the hearing being cut short and, you know, limited amount of time, et cetera. You know, they tell you you're going to have 3 minutes. This is 3 minutes if I read it. But when you get up there at the podium, you're going to get nervous. You're going to pause. You're going to have those aspects that hit you unexpectedly And so what I found that helps me is to prepare it in like segments where, like for instance, in 2019, they told us 3 minutes was what it was going to be when they announced the hearing. Then we get there and they said, oh, 2 minutes each, if you remember that. And I was like, what am I going to do now? You know, but so the easiest thing to do is to put it simply and direct to the point and segment it where you can drop sections out if you need to and still get your full point across. You know, that's the best advice that I can give. You know, if you have a personal story like me, you know, I lost a son to epilepsy, for those that don't know, back in 2016. And we had considered cannabis, although we didn't know a lot about it. And we talked about it. And of course, I had used cannabis for years, but wasn't at that present time. But I told him, you know, if you want to try it, we'll get it. And his biggest thing was he refused to break the law. And at this point in time, he was a 23-year-old man. So I couldn't force him. It was his decision. And I had to respect that as his father. And the one hand, you know, that makes you proud. So to try to get that point across in a hearing is too much information, you know, so you've got to condense it down. Last year, I tried to talk about all the hours of research that I've done myself in reading all the various medical and scientific studies and trials that have been performed around the world. It's just too much information. So I've revamped and redone things this year to where I kind of briefly talk about him, how he wanted to try it, but wouldn't break the law. And until he passed away, I had no real idea about medical cannabis. And basically, I have one point to make. And that point is simply put, at any point in time, any one of you could find yourself on this side of this conversation. And all I can say is, don't be like me. Don't be like me and wait until you're at that point, you know, and that's my testimony. That's what I've done. Video testimonies. That's what's on here that I've sent. And of course, whatever you send in, if you have a story, put a picture on it. Picture's worth 1,000 words. But, you know, to ramble on about needless things is pointless, and you lose their attention by doing so. So my point is just keep it short and sweet. If you have a story, get it out there as easily and quickly as you can. And then, you know, my final point on my testimony in this one is it took me losing a child to open my mind to the reality of medical cannabis. Do not be like me. And that's all I have to say. And, you know, other than that, I don't know what else I can say as far as how to prepare your testimony. You know, what else would you like me to bring up, Dave? Anything else I didn't cover?
Man, I think you did a good job. You know, you and Jax both hit on the fact that you need to be professional. You know, both
absolutely.
Both in your appearance and as well as your vernacular, and your approach. And I think you did a really, really good job. And you know, you told your personal story, and that's really what it's all about. It's just making your story personal, making it personal to them, and making sure that you know they're humans as well, even though.
Yeah, you got to keep it personal, but you got to keep it short and to the point. You know, and that's true both in Austin and DC as well. I've had the same experience in both places. So you know, that's the number one thing.
You bring up a good point about the not rambling on. Make it short and sweet, direct and to the point. Yeah. Because I was in that same room when they told everybody who had prepared a 3-minute speech that now you only have 2 minutes. And everybody had to step it up a little bit. And, you know, there are people who didn't prepare a 3-minute speech. They prepared a 5-minute speech and rambled on for 7. And that's not what you want to do. That's going to lose their attention. yeah, I think you do a great job there, man. Thank you very much, Chris.
You bet. Anytime at all.
All right, folks. Coming up last, but certainly not least, like I said, another very dear friend of mine. I've known this man for about 20 years now. He is a part of our patient advocacy group here with Texas NORML. He's on the board of directors, Mr. Brandon Collinsworth. You take it away, buddy.
Thanks, Dave. And by the way, it is over 20 years now, so you got to check your calendar. Otherwise, yeah, I've known you forever. I've got a short presentation that I'm going to do, but I wanted to take a moment and say if you're here and you're watching this, if you were at the Capitol yesterday or today or even tomorrow for the Hemp Hearing, thank you. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your service to this cause. Thank you for going up there. It's not an easy thing for a lot of people to do with it falling on weekdays and work schedules and whatnot. So I just want to take a moment and say I appreciate that. Give me 1 second. Let me get this loaded up. Oh, that wasn't what I expected. All right. Three, two, one. And Chris, can you give me a thumbs up if you can see my screen? Perfect. Thank you. All right, guys. This is pretty much medical marijuana and how you can help change the laws in Texas. I'm going to kind of give you a stat that really blew my mind. According to the results of a recent Rice University's Baker Institute for Public Policy and a Foundation for Informed Texas study called How Texans Stop Pain with a Plant, findings from a survey of medical cannabis users conducted by our own veteran outreach advisor, Veridiana Edwards. Don't worry, you can call her V. 84% of respondents have considered leaving Texas for a state with a more inclusive medical cannabis program. That hurts. As a fourth generation Texan, I hate hearing the thought that the fact that we are falling behind our neighboring states and the rest of the country is causing people to consider leaving. I'm going to kind of go through each of our neighboring states and kind of give a high level of what they have and some of the things they have in common and some of the things they don't. First, I'm going to start with New Mexico and their medical cannabis program. All of this information that I'm going to provide came from the New Mexico Department of Health website. So here's an overview, and this one is really interesting because they use this unit program. They cover a wide variety of disorders and ailments, including cancer, Crohn's disease, PTSD, opioid use disorder, and many more. These are the exact titles and names they use. So everything I got here comes from them. You can purchase 230 units over a rolling 90 days. So if you're a patient in New Mexico, you should have some good math skills because as you can see here, sorry about that, it breaks down to various amounts. So you have to be keeping track of this. Takes about 45 days from the time your application, if correct, is submitted to be approved. So that's where you're looking at. Each patient's card identification is valid for 1 year from the date of issuance, and it's overseen by the New Mexico Department of Health. I outline these things. You'll see why in a bit. Arkansas's medical marijuana program. This comes from their health site as well. They cover a wide variety of disorders as well, including fibromyalgia, severe arthritis, Tourette's syndrome, hepatitis C, and the interesting statement, any other medical condition or treatment approved by the Arkansas Department of Health. So that's a very broad term. So I do at least appreciate that. You can purchase up to 2.5 ounces every 2 weeks. I did notice, it looks like they only offered flour. I don't believe I'm incorrect on that. Their site was a little hard to read, but I don't believe they offered any other options other than flour. Takes 10 to 14 days for your application to be approved. and that's if it is correct. If it gets sent back to you, obviously that restarts that. Your patient card is also valid for a year in Arkansas. Louisiana's medical marijuana program. You'll notice these have different names for different states. This information came from the Louisiana's agriculture side. You'll see in a second, but and NORML site actually helps clear this up. But as you'll see here, it's overseen by their Department of Agriculture and Forestry, which I thought was quite entertaining. Originally, it only covered the autism spectrum disorders. I don't know how to pronounce this. Cachexia, wasting syndrome is much easier. Cancer, Crohn's disease, epilepsy, glaucoma, HIV/AIDS, intractable pain, defined as pain so chronic or severe to otherwise warrant an opiate prescription, muscular dystrophy, multiple sclerosis, Parkinson's, post-traumatic stress disorder, seizure disorder, spasticity, and severe muscle spasms. Now, luckily, it was expanded last July to any other condition not otherwise specified that a physician in his medical opinion considers debilitating to an individual patient and is qualified through his medical education and training to treat. So I do appreciate seeing that these other states are expanding their program to doctor's discretion and understanding that these are the professionals that need to be able to do this or make these decisions, excuse me. You can have up to a 30-day supply of non-smokable marijuana, acceptable forms of oils, extracts, tinctures, sprays, capsules, pills, solutions, suspension, gelatin-based chewables, lotions, transdermal patches, and suppositories. They update it to allow dispensaries to provide cannabis in a form of a metered dose inhaler. So think like the asthma inhaler types. There are only 9 dispensaries in the entire state. So that, you know, they've got a similar situation that we have with limiting access. And then Oklahoma. Oklahoma being our neighbor to the north, they have a quite comprehensive plan, and I will say a really well laid out website for gathering information for their patients and caregivers up there. And man, does it pay me to constantly give Oklahoma compliments, but it is what it is. Physicians must recommend a medical marijuana license according to acceptable standards. A reasonable and prudent physician would follow for recommending or approving any medication. It essentially allows it to be a very broad acceptance. Those possessing a state-issued license may possess the following: up to 8 ounces of marijuana in their residence, up to 1 ounce of concentrated marijuana, up to 72 ounces of edible marijuana, and up to 6 mature plants and up to 6 seedling plants, and 3 ounces of marijuana on their person. That 72 ounces, I believe, is by weight, but I couldn't find a definition on it. But I thought that was an interesting layout there. They do say that your application will be approved within 14 days, and you would have the license in about 30 days. Patient license are good for 2 years, or they do have a 60-day short-term license. Think of that as like the red handicap placards. So it's a short-term experience, and they have their own authority. So Oklahoma, when this was enacted, created the Oklahoma Medical Marijuana Authority to completely oversee this program. That's what they do. That's their specialty. And it goes back to what I was saying about letting people that know what they're doing handle that. Next, you get to ours and how it compares to those. This information, I got it from the DPS site and from our own Texas NORML site. We have a teacup link on there that you can check out. It can be prescribed for the following medical conditions only: epilepsy, multiple sclerosis, spasticity, autism, ALS, terminal cancer, and curable neurodegenerative diseases. The list of neurodegenerative diseases included, but is not limited to, diseases such as spinal muscular atrophy, the vascular dementia, Huntington's disease, Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, Kearns-Sayre syndrome, and galactosemia. That one. Sorry. It does not expire once you're enrolled, but there are only 3 dispensaries in this state. Seriously, 3 in this state. In case you don't know how big it is, it's really big. 3. Has a 0.5%, 0.5% THC cap for the state. They did have the committee hearing today. I wrote this beforehand that would raise the cap to 5%, as well as the things that Jack's outlined earlier. It's overseen by the Texas Department of Public Safety. As you can see, each of these programs, only 2 of them were handled by a Department of Health, and only 1 of them had a dedicated group just for that. These are what we're fighting for. These are the changes that we are trying to enact to unify this to a more specialized system. And that gets us to this part where these things are so broadly, I messed this up. Let me start that sentence over because I butchered that. As you can see, these programs they vary widely in what conditions are covered, how cannabis can be administered, and even who oversees it on a governmental level. That's why the work we're doing is so crucial as we look to expand our own medical marijuana program. Our voices as patients and caregivers are crucial. So that leads me to how you can get involved and how I got involved. And the tips I'm going to give you here came from attending our advocacy workshops that we do. You can find them through the Texas NORML website. First and foremost, write a testimonial. And I tried to keep the options for this one to things we could do during this session. With COVID and with the limitations at the Capitol, these are the ways you can get involved without being at the Capitol. So you can write a testimonial. You want to keep them to a 1 page. Mine generally starts with a 1-sentence introduction with my name, my position on a specific bill, and I list the bill by name if possible. If not, give a broad opening. I follow up with my story and how cannabis has helped me. Since I write mine in support of medical cannabis bills, I try to include statistics about cerebral palsy and medical cannabis. This provides small details that can stick with them longer than just that moment. Anytime you cite statistics, it is good to cite your source. For example, one of mine that I enjoy, per the Center of Disease Control, cerebral palsy is the most common motor disability in children. CDC estimates that an average 1 in 323 children in the US have cerebral palsy. Then you always want to be polite, thank them for their time. You can provide your contact information at the bottom if you'd like their office to reach back out to you. This is just reaching out to their office directly, either by phone or email, and letting them know that you would like them to support specific bills or legislation. This is you just telling them that you're supporting it. It's not necessarily telling your story. It's just letting them know that their constituents stand on these issues and where they would like them to be voting. You should be trying to build these relationships with your representatives in between sessions because they are extremely busy during session, but it's never too late to start a conversation with them. I do like to go and read their bios and their websites to see what they've been up to and what they're passionate about, because a lot of times you can find tie-ins that cannabis ties into that, and you can use that with them. Always be factual and polite. You can get, you can get further with facts and politeness than you can with name calling any day of the week. And here's the easiest one. Join Texas NORML. Join us. Everything that you've heard tonight, everything that Jax was telling you, that takes manpower, that takes time, that takes energy. And we need your help. And you can join and be, a supporting member for as low as $20 a year. And that's less than $2 a month. Shouldn't be a problem. You can also follow Texas NORML and my Texas NORML patient outreach page through Facebook and all of that. Right now, actually, if you go to the Texas Normal Patient Outreach page, I do have a link to the 1535 to where you can still put your comments in this evening. Try to get those as soon as possible if you have anything prepared. And with that, I would like to say thank you to our wonderful MC, David Wienecke, and thank you to all of you for joining tonight. I really appreciate it.
Brandon, thank you very, very much. We appreciate that. That was a very, very informative presentation that you just gave everybody. And I know I got a lot out of it, and I hope everyone else did as well.
Yeah,
a couple of things I do want to touch on. He had mentioned, you know, all the different ways of contacting your representatives. Obviously, the most impactful is an in-person meeting with a staffer at their office. Now, those are hard to come by these days, in the days of COVID. So we both mentioned phone calls. Those are great. Emails are great. Handwritten letters are better than emails. Throwing that out there. But you know, there are various ways. And like he said, you know, I think everyone touched on one point as well. Be polite, be factual, be concise. I said 1 point and I named you 3. I'm not very good at math, apparently. You know, I remember, I know we've come a long way. I remember my first time lobbying at the Capitol for medical cannabis was in, I believe, 2011. And if I'm not mistaken, I think there were maybe 13 of us there, 17. There were under 20 of us there at the Capitol that day for a Texas Normal official lobby day. And we got laughed at when we went into offices to talk about medical cannabis. And today, you know, it's still an uphill battle, but we have come a long way. We have a lot more allies on our side, and we need to continue to gain more. And the only way that we're going to do that is if each one of you pick up your phone, pick up your computer, do whatever it takes, write those letters, write those emails, make those phone calls, build those connections and relationships with your staffers and with your representatives. And that's the only way we're going to get it done. So I'm going to leave you with that. Guys, thank you, each and every one of you, of our panelists, Brandon, Chris, Justin, thank you for sticking around. I appreciate all of that. Jackson's already gone. I hope she's getting some rest. I know she's got a lot of hard work to do. Steven, tremendous job helping out with admin and all this for us. And guys, thank you. I appreciate everyone for joining us tonight. I wish that I could leave with I'll meet you upstairs. But since we're not at Flamingo, we will be one day, and one day I'll meet you upstairs. Bye, guys.
Thanks.